Turf Today is sponsored by Toro. And did you know that Toro has a full line of work vehicles? Whether you're hauling materials, towing equipment, or shuttling VIPs, Toro has a vehicle for you. Their Workman series is your go-to for power and payload capacity, and the Vista series is perfect for guest transportation. They also have a super comfortable ride. Plus, Toro has tons of options to customize your work vehicles, including all electric models. So check that all out at toro.com.
So what's the storm? Is it Debbie that's going through right now?
In Florida?
Yeah, well, just the entire southeast. I think it's tropical storm or Hurricane Debbie or whatever.
Hmm,
Yeah, Debbie.
not a
It's
little
gonna be a
Debbie,
big one.
big
Not a
Debbie.
little Debbie at all. I was just talking to someone from the USGA. They said he was supposed to be in Pinehurst later this week, but they're expecting something like 25 inches of rain, they think,
Oh, wow.
from this storm. I mean, there's parts of the southeast that are just getting annihilated. So I think I think Naples kind of missed the brunt of it. But I know I saw some pictures from them yesterday where they had some pretty significant flooding. So be curious to see how they're doing.
Hmm. Everybody gets it differently when the big storm like that comes through.
Yeah, yeah, no question. Oh, time to check in for my flight.
There he is. Darren, can you hear us?
I can.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much
Darren,
for
how are
joining
you?
us today.
I'm doing phenomenal. Thank you for having me. It's good to see you both.
Yeah, yeah. So appreciate you taking the time. How'd you all manage the storm here?
We've seen so many of these things that I hate to say it's just a normal occurrence. It's never fun. But we ended up with 9.5 inches with Debbie, which puts us up to 47 and a quarter in the last 65 days. So
Wow.
it could have been a lot worse. I mean, we been through Andrew, Wilma, Irma, Ian, and I'm sure I'm missing a few names in between those.
The whole family, eh?
Yeah.
You've seen the whole alphabet.
Yeah.
Well, this is great having you on, Darren. I know Brian keeps telling me I have to tell you this little tidbit about the show. When Turf Today was started a couple years ago, you were a huge inspiration to what we were doing. I know we shared a lot of your stuff, and you do a lot on social media that we've kind of copied and taken a lot from. So we really appreciate you doing that. And with us starting the show, I've always said, if we ever get Darren Davis on the show, that would, make this thing pretty successful. And I've even referred to you as the white whale. So we're very, very happy to have you on today. And, between Brian and I, we got some great questions for you. So we're certainly excited.
Yeah, you're too kind. Thank you very much.
So
Awesome.
Darren, just give us a little bit of background and kind of how you stumbled upon this fantastic industry.
Stumbled upon is exactly right, Brian. I feel very blessed, fortunate. I actually just got some chill bumps just thinking of really stumbling upon the industry. Um, I grew up in Tallahassee, Florida, and graduated high school in 1985. So I'm showing my age. I still feel 30, but when I graduated high school in 85, if you could major in something in high school, it would have been basketball. My mother was an educator all her life, passionate about education, but I just didn't have the drive. I made pretty much all A's, and not bragging, school's a lot different back then, but a couple of B's here and there. But when I finished, I was just lost. And my father, well, he was the first person in his family to ever go to college. He grew up in very rural Alabama, and he was insisting his boy was going to continue education. So I won't go through the whole story, but after community college, I still lost, spiraling, I would say, even. Started FSU because, again, dad was insistent his boy was going to get an education. And boy, within the first 2 weeks at FSU, I started a civil engineering degree. I knew I wanted to be outdoors. Like many of us in the industry, you love being outdoors. You grew up in the outdoors. I love team sports. I love golf. What am I going to do? I thought, well, civil engineering would be a good degree in outdoors, but no, I was, it's one of those things you look back, and I haven't failed on too many things in life. I've made mistakes, but I was blessed at that last day at FSU, ran into a former high school friend that I gave him the story where I was at in life. And he says, you need to go get a job at the local golf course. I thought, I love golf. That sounds great. And I literally had hair. Fortunately, there's not a picture of that back there. I had hair down to my shoulder. I had earrings, 3 earrings. I took those out and applied at Golden Eagle Country Club in Tallahassee, Florida. At the time, it was the newest, greatest high-end Fazio course. Forrest Fezler was involved. And looking back, blessed that then golf course superintendent Jeff Vietmeyer hired this 22-year-old kid and gave him a chance. And boy, just the smells, the sights, the sounds, watching the sunrise. It took one day and I was absolutely hooked, and I knew I had to do this for a living.
So it's an incredible story. And you go back to Alabama. So you're actually from Huntsville, Alabama.
Yeah, I am. My dad worked at the Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville. He was actually an accountant, but worked for the space industry. Mom was very far into her pregnancy when my father transferred down to Cape Canaveral in Florida. So she stayed behind to have me, and but within 22 days we went down to Florida. So not quite a native Floridian, but if you discount those 22 days, I've been here a long time.
Pretty close,
Yeah.
eh? Well,
Yeah,
that
I'd
was
say
the
you can
last.
consider yourself.
Sorry, I was just gonna say that was my last stop in pro hockey was Huntsville, Alabama, playing for the Havoc, and yeah, it was
Yeah.
a amazing city. We lived in Madison, not too far from there, and they have huge NASA ties with the Von Braun Center and all the rocket testing and everything. So I wondered if it had to do with NASA at all, and that's cool that it has that connection.
It did. Yeah, we grew up in a town called Rockledge and Titusville down by Cape Canaveral. And I don't vividly remember this, but I've seen pictures that remind me of us literally getting on ladders, getting on our roof and watching the rockets go off, back in the early 70s. I guess it'd have to be the early 70s. Good memories. Two very engaged parents. I feel very fortunate to have been raised by wonderful people.
So you didn't have any clue when you mowed in that little backyard putting green at your house growing up that would eventually be your profession?
I really didn't, Brian. My father had a set of golf clubs. I wish I still had those persimmon woods. Those were sweet. But yeah, I knew I love sports and I love being outdoors, and I didn't want to be inside doing homework like most kids, and just took a lawnmower and yeah, cut in a low cut green in the backyard and hit shots into it and hit wiffle balls in the front yard. And I had to be doing, I guess I haven't changed much today. I need to be doing something at all times. It's hard for me to shut it down. I had to learn that patience. I just posted something on X a few minutes ago about becoming more patient as I've aged, and remembering that I need to have good physical and mental health. But like many of our industry, like many of our mutual friends, definitely a type A personality. Myers-Briggs says I'm an ISFJ, which means I shouldn't be able to make it in this industry, but I figured out a way to make it work.
Nice. So tell us then about your first day at Golden Eagle. Someone as accredited as yourself, you've come so far. We'd love to hear about your very first day working turf.
Well, what's been fun is watching the changes, because I didn't even know what a golf course superintendent did when I applied for that job. I just knew I had to do something. I mean, I had dropped out of FSU. I remember crying to my father saying, "Look, I'm just trying to save tuition money. I've got to leave." And I didn't quit anything in life. So you didn't know what I was getting into. But my gosh, I mean, remembering strapping on those boots that first day, and again, things were a lot different back then. I mean, weed control on goosegrass in North Florida was dipping a mop into a container of Roundup and going around and dotting the goosegrass plants. I mean, getting rid of frost occasionally back then meant going to the hydraulic satellites and pulling hydraulic tubes when the temperature got above 32. And I can remember making a mistake and pulling them too soon sometimes. But it was not a high-end golf course. It was meant to be, but struggled financially. So, I mean, I've seen all levels of golf courses and loved them all. But when I did find the job at Golden Eagle, Jeff Vietmeyer and his cohort, Dave Gardner, wonderful people, both Penn State grads, encouraged me to pursue this as a career. I looked at a variety of schools, did up at Penn State, but from the moment I fell in love with it, I just immersed myself with everything golf, everything golf course management, everything GCSAA, USGA. I read every green section record cover to cover, every golf course management cover to cover back when it was 200 pages. Bought every horticulture book, tried to learn every plant, every grass species. I mean, when I'm in, I'm all in. And I knew I was hooked, and just love that passion that I'm blessed to have today, 35, 37, 8 years later.
So you mentioned Penn State. You went from Florida up to State College, and you got to learn from, and then alongside, obviously your fellow Penn State alum there, learn from and with some legends. Talk about your experience at Penn State.
Yeah, very fortunate that Jeff and Dave both were Penn State grads. And remember, this is back in the mid to late 80s. And back then, the demand in this industry was incredibly high. Getting into a turf school the first year was almost unheard of. You had to have letters of recommendation, 1 year experience on a golf course. And due to the fact that I was working in Florida for two Penn State grads who supported me, I got in the first year, and it's like all the stars have aligned, because a kid that was spiraling coming out of community college found this passion, and had I not got in, I don't know what might have happened. I hope I would have stuck with it. But again, the stars aligned and ended up at Penn State, I think in part because I was from Florida. Dr. Duich, who ran that program from the 60s until my last year, the year I graduated, was his last class. But he loved it to bring in students from around the country and around the world. As many states as he could represent, he did so. Gosh, I have so many stories that I can tell. And, Brian, you and I have talked, you've heard a few of these, and I won't go into great detail, but that first day of school, I love telling the story of wandering in this classroom with, essentially 25 people you've never met, and you're all just waiting for this turf grass giant, Dr. Joe Duich. I mean, the guy that invented pin cross, spin links. We used to take those burlap bags and make tables out of them. He was a legend. And, this legend walks in and doesn't even look at the class, doesn't address us, just walks straight to the podium, still smoking a cigarette in the classroom back then. And you in these little wooden desks and crank style windows. And well, Dr. Duich puts his books down and then draws this circle on the board. And then he draws a triangle on the bottom. And I'm telling it kind of quickly because it seems like 10 minutes this thing goes on. And he finally writes the word turf in the small triangle on the bottom. And he writes the word people in the big circle. And he finally turns around and says, I can still do his voice, "So you've all come here to be a top golf course superintendent. What we can teach you in the next 2 years in this program is 10% of what you need to do the job. 90% of what you need to do this job are your people skills. You either have those inherently or you better learn them. And you'll all call me in 5 years and tell me how right I was." And I love telling a story. I'm sorry, people, I'm sure some people listening will have heard that, but it's impactful then to me and impactful today because it's true. And it took me less than 2 years to make that phone call to him and say, help, Dr. Duich, help. It's not a turf issue. It was a contractor and a golf course architect issue. And he called me every day for a week to check on me. And it was, it meant so much when he says, stop calling me Dr. Duich, call me Joe. And that's, as you know, it's the people in this industry that make it so great. And it's what's kept me passionate and hopefully has added to whatever success I've had.
So staying there at Penn State, tell me about the etiquette class. I'll never forget my dad telling me that he had to take an etiquette class.
I did not expect that question. Not many people know about that. I can even remember her name, Brian, Mrs. Franz. Mrs. Franz. And, back then, you're right. Turf school programs didn't have etiquette class. I mean, who did? I mean, and so, yeah. And again, you've sensed it, I'm sure already. I'm a passionate individual. And when I found my love, I was going to excel and I was going to make straight A's. And all but two classes I did, and hers was one. And I remember getting so angry because she would come in and say, well, this is the rules, but you can do it a little differently. And it's the same to true today. You have some steadfast rules, where the knife go, where the fork go, how you write a wedding invitation. All the things that 22-year-old turf students learning is writing wedding invitations. We all scratched our heads and said, what is Dr. Dewitz thinking? But I had to make 107 on a final exam to get an A- in that class. And I did get the A-. And I remember writing her a letter on the back page of my exam saying, Mrs. Franz, I just need to tell you, I appreciate the knowledge, but you kept saying there's no rules and blah, blah. So it's, yeah, a lot of students that think they can make straight A's do not make an A in her class. Some make B's and C's. Yeah. But Carol Raw and I teach a class at GCSAA conference. This will be our second year, and it's a 2-hour class. It's beyond agronomy. We did it last year in Phoenix, and half the class is what I'm just telling you about Mrs. Franz. We talk about things about silverware and etiquette, and I love that. That's my passion, is when I get a chance to go around the country and speak. A lot of it is on professionalism and how you present yourself.
That's amazing, Darren. You talk about the people skills, obviously a big thing, and that's why, we get a lot of younger people reaching out asking, should they go to school or should they just keep working and just kind of hone those skills and take the attitude and take the personality they have and just work at the golf course. Nowadays, we've actually been having a lot more people reaching out asking about the programs. And we put it on Instagram today asking, somebody wrote in asking, should I be going to a 2-year program or a 4-year program? We put it out on Turf today, and I can't even do anything with it. We have like over 500 responses. A lot of people are saying kind of the same thing, but I'd love to hear your opinion on what on kind of that issue.
Absolutely. So going back to the mid 80s or late 80s, maybe, or, as I'm in school and just beyond, there was a thought you needed a 4-year degree. And there was even thought at GCSAA, when certification was really ramping up, that you couldn't become a certified superintendent unless you had a 4-year degree. Now that didn't come to fruition. But I think it varies on the individual. If you're coming out of high school and you're not quite ready to be in the real world, and you need that time and discipline in college, I could understand a 4-year degree. I don't personally feel you need a 4-year degree, but I would never tell someone they shouldn't have it. In fact, I went back to FGCU back about 15 years ago and got a communication degree. So I do have a 4-year degree, but I got it fairly recently. But I listen to all your podcasts, by the way. I love walking 5 miles a day, or I bike 20. And 3/4 of the times I'm doing those exercises, I'm listening to podcasts, or I'm listening to an educational book or a leadership book. And I listened to Tyler Bloom's answer, and I'm probably going to mimic what he said. It's not so. I'll add a little bit to what he said. It's not so much the education you get there, because you learn the basics, you learn the fundamentals. You can learn those online. The Penn State online program is blown up. The amount of people in that program is huge. I think that's a great alternative to go into a 2-year program and sitting in a classroom. I will tell you the numbers are rising. We do track that, and more people are going to school now each year. They're seeing this as a good industry. But I wouldn't give my 2-year degree up for anything because of the relationships I made. I still have my books from the 86, 7 at Penn State. I still have all my notebooks. I occasionally refer to them. I've used them in speeches. But it's up to the individual, but I would not be where I'm at today had I not gone to Penn State, interacted with the Dr. Dewich's. I have different names than Tyler Haggs. I'm a lot older than Tyler, but Dr. Dewich, Dr. Waddington, who wrote Soils books, there's a name from the past. Dr. Watsky, God rest his soul, and just some incredible people that became a network that I could reach out to. And my fellow students, Paul B. Paul B. had finished the 4-year program at Penn State, and he didn't want to go to work. Sorry, Paul, but that was what he told us. But so he went and did the 2-year program after doing the 4-year program. He did it in 1 year because he took a lot of that credits. So my first year, Paul did the 2-year program at Penn State. So he has both. Probably the only person that has a 4-year and a 2-year degree from Penn State. So I give him credit. But that's the first time I met Paul. But I guess it varies, and I'm not going to try to convince somebody that they have to go to school, but it's certainly been beneficial for me.
Darren, you talk about being an advocate for the professionalism within this industry. What do you think the perception is from outside this industry of what a golf course superintendent is? I mean, have we moved past that whole Carl Spackler perception? Where do you think we are?
So in all sincerity, Brian, more goosebumps in my arm because we have. And I'm not saying we're where we need to be. And I know many people listening to this are going to say, what's he talking about? We're not there. We don't get the respect we deserve. And I think some of that, it goes to the individual. You have to earn that respect. There's many examples I can give you of how somebody could do that. But as an industry, as a whole, we have come so far. I mean, from being seen as the person in the overalls, the Carl Spackler, to where we are today. I love traveling the country and talking about this because every region's different. I get that. I have some pretty steadfast rules that I believe in. But you have to first and foremost show that professionalism yourself. But I'm proud of the industry, and I am proud of what GCSAA and others have done, past leaders of GCSAA, past board members. When I travel, not only as a board member for the 10 years I served the association, but I still travel. Primarily, I wear a GCSA shirt. Occasionally, I'll put an Olde Florida shirt on. But I'm telling you, Brian, it's probably 8 out of 10 times I get on a plane and I get asked, oh, you're a superintendent. Oh, you're a member of Golf Course Superintendent Association. Oh, thank you for being a superintendent. It happens all the time. Got a text message from a vendor literally 2 weeks ago. He said, I just have to tell you, Darren. He says, I was in a Starbucks 2 days ago, and I'm in a restaurant today, and I'm working on my laptop, and I've got a GCSA sticker on my laptop. Both days, somebody stopped and said, you're a superintendent. And the second day, thank you for being a superintendent. So, we don't have to change our titles anymore to director of agronomy. I'm not saying you shouldn't have that title, and people do. Director of agronomy, director of golf course and grounds, whatever. People know what a superintendent is now. When I first got in the industry, you all probably don't remember the show, but there was a show when Dwayne Schneider was the superintendent of a building. And that's what people thought a superintendent was, superintendent of a school or a superintendent of a maintenance guy at a building. Today people know that we are the keepers of the grounds, the keeper of the largest asset of a club. We're the go-to people at the club. We're the problem solvers. So in my opinion, we've come a long way, a very long way.
You're
giving me goosebumps now, Darren. Jeez.
I get a little passionate, Adam. I'll try not to get too high on my soapbox.
No, that's great information. That's awesome. Just jumping back a little bit, coming from school, you were somebody that took an AIT position, if I'm not wrong about that. That was at a certain golf course most people would know about.
It's a little small golf course in Augusta, Georgia, that holds a little tournament every year. But he talked about would I go to school. If I hadn't gone to Penn State, I probably would not have got that internship at Augusta National. It was a 6-month internship. At that point, my gosh, from that point to today, every superintendent at Augusta National had been a Penn State graduate. And so they were very close to the program. Dr. Dewich was a consultant. They took 3 students every year. We lived in an apartment, which is now next to Berkman's Place, above 5. Back then, again, things have changed, but back then I can tell some things. We would drive the golf cart to the fence, pull a key, jump a chain link fence, sleep a few hours, and go right back to work the next day. And you work 7 days a week. Times have changed, but very fortunate to have worked 6 months as an intern, and was blessed that I got a call from Marsh Benson in my last 2 weeks at Penn State. I'm graduating. I had resumes out, didn't have a job. And Marsh called me and said, do you have a job? And no, sir. And I'll make the story short because it seems roommates are Marsh Benson's on the phone. I'm like, oh, Marsh. And he says, Augusta National is a great place to do a job search. graduating second in my class, first or second in my class. I kind of lost track, but one of the two. And he said, you know, do you want a job? I'm like, you know, yes, I don't care what you pay me. Pay me what you paid me last year, which I remember was $5.25 an hour.
Oh,
Graduating Penn State, going back to Augusta National for 5.25. I said, Marsh, gosh, I am graduating top of my class and I could use a title. Well, how does spray tech sound? I said, Marsh, that sounds great. I'll be your spray tech. And I got to go home for just a couple of days, but I'll be right back. And we graduated a month before the Masters every year at Augusta at Penn State. And so I said, I'll be back on this date. And he goes, that's great. And I said, well, Darren, look forward to seeing you. And I said, well, Marsh, I got one more problem. I'm sorry. He goes, I don't have a place to live. He goes, well, no problem. You'll live with Brad in the par 3 house. So Brad Owen, just retired golf course superintendent, and I lived behind number 1 in the par 3. And then we still got to just drive a golf cart from there to work every day. But, you know, what an experience. Just like Penn State was, just like, you know, working these major tournaments, the people that you're involved with, it's people that are passionate about the industry, want to be employed at these places. So, and then just the experience of working masters. I can, you know, tell you stories if you'd like, but very special place. It certainly has opened some doors for me, and it's still something that people like to talk about today.
I'd love to hear some stories, but one thing that you just kind of touched upon, which I'd love for you to expand upon, is just the relationships and the people. You know, I know, again, you've worked with some phenomenal people. You've had some incredible mentors. Just talk about some of the people that have helped you along the way.
Yeah, so I told you I went to school with Paul B, and then, you know, Paul R had just left Augusta National when I went there. So it was actually Marsh's first year. Paul R and I became very good friends. We ended up doing some video series together. We did the superintendent video workshop, which I wrote the first 7, filmed a lot of them at Olde Florida. And then we started doing the superintendent video magazine, which was free podcast, free social media, where we would travel the country. And I worked for food and beverage and airline tickets, but we would go around the country and interview people, and I would just do the introductions to the story, and that later became GCSAA TV. But I mean, gosh, starting with Marsh Benson, who is a dear friend. We still share Christmas cards, which, by the way, in my speech, that's one thing I say is continue to send holiday cards to anybody you want to stay in touch with. But Marsh, of course, Brad, living with Brad, and then all the people in the crew. I mean, Mike Verkotrin, who's at Butterfield. Mike and I worked together at Augusta. Mark DeSone, who went to Council Fire. I mean, just hundreds of names of people that I work with. You know, and Augusta National is like any other golf course. It's a golf course. You know, it's things are going to go wrong, and you know, happens at Muirfield, happens at Augusta National, happens at Oakmont. But Mike and I became close, you know, kind of over just a situation where it was the summertime, but he was using a quick coupler. Back then it was old Buckner quick couplers, before Toro became the standard. But you know, just turned it a little too hard, and off comes the quick coupler. And I had a picture. Eventually got rid of the picture, but I had a picture of Mike just holding the quick coupler in 11 green with a geyser coming out. And I tell that story, and it you know, it's nothing secret there. It's just a course like any other private course. You just keep business to yourself. But part of the reason I told the story is it's just that, you know, people have this aura of Augusta National, and it's an extremely special place, as is Muirfield and Oakmont and all the great Shinnecock, Chicago Golf Club. But the superintendents there put the pants on the same way every other superintendent in this country put their pants on. And the crew members work just as hard as crew members at any other golf course. You have a little more money to work with, and problems get solved a little more quickly, but you're still doing the basics. And I tell that to a lot of members that ask about the experience, that it's just mowing grass. You know, it's a special grass, and it's done correctly, and you have enough people to get the job done the way it really would like to get done if you could. But in the end, it's just golf, and it's just grass. It's the relationships you build along the way.
If I could ask a quick follow-up, you mentioned a lot of those names. How have they been beneficial and influential to you throughout your career?
So when I left Augusta National. I went to a place called the Loxahatchee Club in Jupiter, Florida. Wonderful Jack Nicklaus course. At the time, it was a top 100 golf course in the country. That was a different era in our industry, and I was there for a year and 3 months. So I'm interviewing at Olde Florida at age 24. And so one of the questions I got asked in the interview is, well, why would we hire this young 24-year-old kid, to do this job? And I'm like, well, gentlemen, you're right. I have not seen everything. I'm fairly new in the industry, but if you look at my resume, my background, my education, my reference list, I've surrounded myself with people that I can reach out and call and find an answer if I don't know it. And I do that today. I mean, I've been blessed to have traveled to so many major events and just golf events. And another tidbit I love to give when I give presentations is you don't have to do that. It's great if you can. At the very least, go visit a golf course down the street. When I would travel with GCSAA, it's rare I didn't at least go visit one person on a trip from the airport or a trip back to the airport. You can gain so much by just interacting with one person. And, whether it's a group text message, which many of us do, I have those going on. I've got the social media, I got the private messaging, and I love to pick up the phone as well and do that today. Just surround yourself with good people, practice good delegation skills, form a good team, form a good network, because it's going to help you, obviously.
Yeah,
Help you keep your job and help you get a job.
100%. We talk to everybody about networking and how big it is. And before we get too far from Augusta, I do want to just ask if you had any great stories for us. We haven't heard too many things about Augusta. It is very top secret. But before we move on, is there anything that sticks out from you? Because I know you work there and you've been there as a volunteer. So from either side, is there anything that people would love to hear?
It's such a special place. I love going back. I still go back every year I can, and go to any major that I can, any golf tournament I can. A couple things I remember, I was young. It was my first time. I was an internship, and the second job after mowing greens, you took a soil probe sampler, the metal silver ones, and you were told to go out and find a ball mark and pull the ball mark out just a quarter inch or so with the soil tool and press the sides together and then squeeze it in. Now there's selling tools to do this. Back in the late 80s, we just did it. That's how Marsh had us do it. But it was, gates are opened. I'm on 18 green at Augusta. Chairs are getting set up, and Asian fella calls me over and says, broken English, but what are you doing? So I explain it to him, and whoa, whoa, whoa. And he had cameras. It was a practice day, and show me your bucket. So he's taking pictures of the bucket, and it's like, things that we just take for granted as turf guys. This guy was fascinated, and you're at Augusta, which many people think's a pinnacle. Remember mowing 13 green late one night, and these guys, I'm sure they had quite a few beverages all day long, but they didn't want to leave the property. So I'm mowing the green, and they're just standing there, and I'm dead tired, and they want to, they say, wait, we need to get a picture. I'm like, yeah, no problem. Here, just give me your camera. You two stand there. And they go, no, we want one with you. I'm like, okay. I'm just a young kid mowing a green now. So, I mean, it's, I could go on and on. It's, we had old VT2 satellites with, light bulbs that we installed in the hydraulic satellites to keep the hydraulic tubes from freezing. People think Augusta always has the best, and they certainly have a lot, and they've been blessed. But in the end, Marsh worked with a budget when I was there, and they have a budget today, and it's a business.
Darren, you mentioned interviewing for your job at Olde Florida and talked about your resume and all that. I really did want to talk to you about your resume. So I'm glad you made that statement. Any young person that I talk to in this industry that asks for advice on resumes or digital profiles, I always direct them to your website. What was the reason? Why did you decide to build that digital portfolio for yourself? And why do you think it's important to have something like that these days?
So going back to growing up and not knowing what I was going to do in life, it's all the things that I enjoyed. I loved photography. I loved writing. I loved reading. I loved creating. Thought about being an ad agency. So all those things that I loved, I went back and got a communication degree from Florida Gulf Coast University. It's all about setting yourself apart. And I don't claim to be the best at anything in this world. Not one thing am I the best at. Not the best grass grower, not the best speaker. I'm not the best anything. But I enjoy communication, and I believe it's very important to set yourself apart. I believe you need to toot your own horn. Title of one of my presentations: how to set yourself apart. The website came out of me doing the work for Epic Creative all these years. The original Superintendent Video Workshop, Video Magazine. When I used to get royalties, just to be honest and forthright. We having written them and then having produced them and filmed at my golf course. And they're good friends of mine that own the company. And when I ran for the GCSAA board of directors back in 2011, I went to Jim Becker and I said, Jim, stop sending me royalties. We're good. Let's just call it even. And he said, are you serious? I said, I am. I said, I didn't do it for the money. I did it for the experience and the fun. And, I certainly have enjoyed the slight couple of dollars I got. It really was a couple of dollars, but I want to create a website. Would you help me with it? So they created the website for me, and we called the royalties good. And they continue to help me manage it today. So they've helped me upgrade to the newest platform. Anything I need uploaded, I've learned to do some of it. But it's my one-stop shop, Brian. And again, as I travel, people recognize the shirt, and we get in conversations, and I'll undoubtedly grab a business card and show them the QR code. And you just, as you know what a QR code is, you guys both do, but I explain what it is to some people, and it takes you to the website, and the website is on the card. So most articles I've written, I've lost track of some, and those video workshops they weren't digitized. It's back when we had VHS tapes. We used to mail those things around the country in VHS tapes. But it's just important for me to not only promote myself, but it's promoting the industry. It's promoting my team members that work for me. It's promoting the GCSAA. It's promoting Olde Florida Golf Club. It's making sure we are past those spackler days, and showing the people the good thing we do. And if we get into a conversation on a plane about water or anything, most of those items are on my website. So I love to pass that out. And, Kurt Keebler was the general manager at the Loxahatchee Club when I was an assistant superintendent, and he's obviously Copland Keebler Wallace now. But back then he was a GM and gave me a mock interview before I went to Olde Florida. And the one thing he said to me was, Darren, if you get that job at Olde Florida, I know you need to stay 5 years to show stability. I said, Mr. Keebler, 5 years. I don't know that I can do that. I had aspirations. I was going to, replace Marsh someday at Augusta National when he left on his own terms. But, I quickly realized through some friends, mentors like Frank Dobie, certainly Marsh, certainly Tom Burrows, and others, that, I had a good job. I had a great job. And so, September 2nd will be 32 years I've been at Olde Florida Golf Club. So the website's not for me to move on to another job. Although, Brian, you're a smart guy and you're a communication guy. That it can help. And I think it's a valuable tool to set yourself apart. For me, it's more about promotion of the industry and just keeping all that could in one spot. It's my one stop. It's my hub. All my social media can be accessed from there. Yeah.
No, I think it's a great tool and something that more people should adopt. And we're definitely living in a digital world now. So, social media and things like that are certainly taking over. You've been, kind of at the forefront of turf social media for years now. Have you seen a lot more people getting into it? You see it being more in the forefront of our industry and sort of taking over now?
I do. I think it's a way to set yourself apart. Number one, it's a way to show the positive things you do. And when I think of tooting your own horn, some people think it might have a negative connotation. To me, what tooting your own horn is just humbly displaying your most positive attributes in a very passionate way. And that to me is what social media is. And I do talk a lot about it when I give presentations, and I have slides that are, here's my red, here's my no, here's my yellow, which is caution, here's my green. And I explain that, look, I'm from a different generation than many of you, and I'm just going to tell you how I use social media. So I love talking social media. But I do think it's a valuable tool, and if you use it in a professional manner. And one slide I like to talk about, or one topic I like to talk about, is being professional on it, and knowing when to engage, knowing that it's not a place for dirty laundry. That's a laundry basket. And that the delete button is nothing more than damage control. And we've all, if you've seen social media, you don't have to even seen social media, just turn on the TV at night and you'll see all the faux pas that people make on social media, whether you're a politician, whether you're a sports person, whether you're a superintendent. People make mistakes, and the delete button is nothing more than damage control. And I won't go into much more detail other than I love to give the Ted Bishop story. I respect Ted Bishop. He's a PGA of America past president. He was within a very short period of time of finishing his presidency of PGA of America. And he made a faux pas, and it quickly caught him, and he quickly took it down. Within hours, it was down. But in the meantime, he's having dinner with Nick Faldo at the Greenbrier, and his phone's going crazy. And he finally goes to the bathroom, and it's the lawyers from PGA of America. It's other people calling him saying, "Ted, you can't say that. You're right. It was a passionate moment." Deleted it. Quickly goes away. Thought he was fine. There's a book, Unfriended, that Ted Bishop wrote. So you want to know the whole story? Ted actually wrote a book about it. I've read the book. Not only necessarily need to read the book because I'm telling you the story, but he was ousted. It's a PGA of America's president. Now you think about that. I relate that all back to, you're a golf course superintendent at your dream job. You've been there for 15 years and you make a faux pas on social media. You could lose your job, and it's what I caution people. I'm not a teetotaler. I have no problem telling people I enjoy a good glass of red wine and with a nice dinner. But if you look on social media, you'll be very hard pressed to find me ever with a glass of wine or anything in my hand. You won't find me unshaven. You won't find me in a situation that I don't believe is professional. And I take great pride in that. And I just try to educate others and give them my opinions, and they can do what they want with it.
We will see you, though, on a boat with a lot of fish. Talk about some of those hobbies that kind of help keep you grounded.
Yeah, so I'm a big believer. I kind of touched on physical health, mental health, and I exercise daily. And I learned that from my father, who had a diabetic seizure when I was in 5th grade. He was a hardworking athlete as I have, and he realized that he can't go through life. He's going to lose his family. So he started going at lunch to the YMCA and working out. I mean, this is back in the 80s, and took an hour lunch and then went back to work. I started that back in 1997. I wrote an article for Golf Course Management. It was in the front 9 section that talked about mental health and physical health. And I used to take a magazine, because you had stacks of magazines back then, and take it to the YMCA, get on a stationary bike and ride. So mental and physical health are very important to me. And so the mental aspect is the finding my happy place. And I believe we all need to have a happy place, whatever that looks like for you, whether it's spending time with your family, whether it's playing hockey, Adam, whether it's whatever it is that you enjoy. But I think it's more than an hour a day of exercise. It's for me, it's putting my boat in Goodland, Florida, which is about a 45-minute drive, and being there in time to watch the sunrise, throwing it on a TikTok video. Love that. And, if you catch a couple fish, it's a bonus. And when COVID hit, I didn't miss a Sunday, and I had fresh fish twice a week. I ended up losing 25 pounds. Most people